an alien, a demonic entity, or a horrific beast, the Enfield monster. Throughout 1973, residents in and near the communities of Murfreesboro, Mt. Vernon and Edwardsville reported sightings of a monster. Locals gave the creature a number of colorful monikers, depending on where it was seen. The Big Muddy Monster, the Murfreesboro Monster, the Pump House Monster. Perhaps today it's best known by the name it was given earlier that year, in April, when it was reported down the road in Enfield, Illinois. Don't believe it? Ask yourself, and answer honestly. Somewhere nearby, just down the road near that place you used to hang out. Of course, folklore doesn't have to be a monster or a ghost. Regardless of where you are as you listen to this, there is some folklore just around the corner from you. It surrounds all of us. We don't always know the truth about where a particular bit of folklore starts, but we don't have to. Time will tell, and the truth is, good stories have legs. In 1973 was the year the Miami Dolphins completed the only perfect season in NFL history. The war in Vietnam ended, and Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon was released. Denim and knits were big fashion statements. The hippie look was very in, and in Illinois, monsters were in the news. Over a span of about 6 months, residents of Illinois, in and near the communities of Murfreesboro, Mt. Vernon, and Edwardsville reported sightings of a monster. Locals dubbed the creature a number of colorful monikers, depending on where it was seen. The Big Muddy Monster, the Murfreesboro Monster, the Pump House Monster. Perhaps today it's best known by the name it was given earlier that year, in April, when it was reported down the road in Enfield, Illinois, the Enfield Monster. Enfield, Illinois was a tiny town of about 750 residents in 1973. On the night of April 25, 1973, Henry McDaniel reported he had just come home from a meeting when he heard something scratching at his front door. McDaniel went to the door and saw what he initially thought was a bear. It was trying to get in the house, McDaniel said. He ran to his bedroom to retrieve a flashlight and pistol, and when he returned, he saw the creature in his yard. It had 3 legs on it, McDaniel said, a short body, 2 little short arms, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. It stood 4.5 to 5 feet tall, and was grayish colored. McDaniel said he fired 4 shots at it. He told Dennis Montgomery, from the Associated Press, "When I fired that first shot, I know I hit it." McDaniel claimed it hissed like a wildcat and covered 50 feet in 3 jumps, then disappeared into some brush along the railroad tracks behind his home. McDaniel called the authorities, and a responding trooper from the state police, James Massa, said McDaniel appeared rational and sober. McDaniel later told a reporter, "If they do find it, they will find more than one, and they won't be from this planet, I can tell you that." The men investigated and found no sign of the monster, but McDaniel told the Mt. Vernon Register they found tracks in the soft ground outside his home. McDaniel described them as looking like a dog's footprint except with 6 toes, a creature with 3 legs and 6 toes on each foot. Let's retreat to science for a moment. The only 3-legged animal that you have a chance of running into is usually a dog that heroically survived a battle with either cancer or a car. There are no known 3-legged animals. Also, every land vertebrate we know of has 5 toes, max, unless it's some kind of aberrant mutation or something. The Register story, published 2 days after McDaniel's sighting, makes mention of one other thing, without much context. McDaniel said he was sure it wasn't a dog, and was positive it wasn't a kangaroo, because, he said, he once had a pet kangaroo while he was serving with the army in Australia. On May 6, McDaniel called radio station WWKI and reported he had seen the monster again, in the dark of early morning, silhouetted against the sky as it negotiated a nearby railroad trestle. That night, WWKO News Director Rick Rainbow went to Enfield accompanied by a radio station client, a man named Ed Phillips. According to Henry McDaniel, Phillips was also an avid big game hunter and brought a veritable arsenal of tranquilizer guns and other specialized weapons. The men were reportedly in town for 2 days and claimed to have seen the creature in an abandoned building near McDaniel's house. Rainbow even claimed to have captured a recording of the creature's wail, but on May 8, things came to a head. On a report of gunshots, White County Sheriff's deputies arrested 5 men, all from out of town, all under the age of 20. Initially the men were reported to be in town to hunt the monster. 2 of the men said they saw a grey, hairy creature streaking into the underbrush, and that it moved faster than a man. 4 of them fired at it, and 2 of them claimed they hit it. White County Deputy Sheriff Jim Clark said, "Nothing I know of is in season now, especially monsters. Anybody we know of out hunting monsters, especially with guns, will be put in jail. We're afraid they'll kill somebody." Rick Rainbow's monster hunt radio stunt quickly came to an end after the arrests, and the sheriff's department later played down the monster hunt arrests as just some good old boys having a good time with a few too many barley pops. By May 16 of 1973, a man named Alan Yorkshire of Elyria wrote a letter to the newspaper in Enfield. The problem: there was no newspaper in Enfield. So City Treasurer Myrtis Fields opened the letter and reported the contents back to the police. There was no newspaper in Enfield. So City Treasurer Myrtis Fields opened the letter and reported the contents back to the police. Yorkshire believed the Enfield monster was his kangaroo, Macy, who had either escaped or been stolen. He offered a $500 reward for the animal's return and announced plans to visit the city to search for the animal, but we were unable to find anything further on whether he ever found the animal. About 6 weeks later, and 70 miles to the southwest, Randy Needham and Judy Johnson were about to have a terrifying encounter at the Lindell Street boat ramp in Murfreesboro. It was June 25, 1973. According to City of Murfreesboro Police Report, 19-year-old Randy Needham arrived in person at the Murfreesboro Police Department with a wild story to tell. Needham said he and his girlfriend, Judy Johnson, had been parked by the boat ramp when Randy saw an unknown creature north of the Big Muddy River. Officers Nash and Lindsay responded to the scene, and Randy Needham and Judy Johnson met them there. While there, the youths explained what they had experienced. Quoting from the report, complainant was parked on the south side of the parking area next to the woods. Complainant heard a loud screaming sound in the wooded area and observed a large creature approximately 7 feet tall. The creature appeared to have light-colored hair, matted with mud. The creature appeared to be walking on 2 legs and was proceeding toward his car. The creature continued the screaming, changing tones and proceeding toward the car. Complainant then left the area and came to MPD. When questioned further, Judy Johnson admitted that she heard the monster's cry but did not see it since she was inside the car and it was very dark outside. However, both Judy and Randy agreed that no human would be able to make a howl as loud as the one they had heard. Needham and the officers investigated near the riverbank and found 12-inch tracks in the mud from feet that had sunk 3 to -4 inches into the muck, sometimes 3 feet apart. The investigating officers left the scene to get boots which would allow them to investigate more thoroughly, and returned with Deputy Sheriff Scott and Randy Needham. They found more tracks, and while Officer Lindsay returned to his squad car to get a camera to photograph the tracks, Scott, Patrolman Nash, and Needham bent over to examine a track in the mud. Just then, an ear-splitting scream pierced the night air. Based on the research for this episode, one particular scenario seems likely. 2 days after Henry McDaniel's first sighting of the monster, He told a newspaper reporter that he was sure it wasn't a kangaroo because he used to have one as a pet when he served in the army in Australia. There's no question that people did, and still do, see things in the heartland, for any number of reasons, but considering the age of the mystery, and the simple curiosity of the question, it's quite likely that an explanation of the monsters in Illinois, unanswered since 1973, might remain forever.